bustling city. As the evening haze settled like a mystical cloak, Emma, a college student, lingered outside a party. The night air was crisp, tinged with the promise of an approaching winter. Her breath formed little clouds of mist as she pulled out her phone, requesting an Uber to take her home. The car arrived swiftly, a nondescript sedan that blended into the sea of city vehicles. The driver, a man with deep-set eyes and a nondescript appearance, nodded agreeing as Emma settled into the back seat. As they pulled away, she noticed the lack of the usual Uber sticker on the windshield, but her tired mind shrugged it off. The city lights blurred as they drove, the familiar streets morphing into a labyrinth of unknown turns and darkened alleys. Emma's unease grew. They were veering off her usual route. She leaned forward, her voice tinged with apprehension. "Excuse me, are you taking a different route?" The driver's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror, a chilling smile playing on his lips. "A shortcut," he murmured, his voice a low, unsettling monotone. Emma's heart began to race. She reached for her phone, only to find no signal. Panic set in as she realized they were heading into a desolate part of the city, far from the safety of her apartment. The buildings here were abandoned, windows like hollow eyes in the dim street light. She tried the door, but it was locked. The driver's smile widened as he saw her struggle. "You're not going anywhere," he said, his tone menacing. In a desperate bid for escape, Emma searched the car, her fingers closing around a forgotten screwdriver wedged between the seats. With a swift movement, she lunged forward, aiming for the driver. He grunted, swerving the car as it crashed into an old, dilapidated building. Dazed and bruised, Emma crawled from the wreckage, her heart pounding in her ears. The driver lay motionless, the screwdriver protruding from his shoulder. She didn't wait to check if he was alive, her only thought to escape. Running through the desolate streets, Emma's mind raced with terror. The city she knew so well had turned into a nightmarish maze. She could hear footsteps echoing behind her, or was it just her imagination? Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she saw the comforting lights of her apartment building. She stumbled inside, collapsing in the lobby, her breath ragged sobs of relief. The police arrived shortly after, but when they went to retrieve the car, it was gone, as if it had never existed. The driver, the car, the terrifying ride, all vanished without a trace. Emma recovered, but the horror of that night lingered. She never knew what truly happened, who the driver was, or why he had chosen her. The city, once a place of vibrant life, now held an undercurrent of fear for her, a reminder of the night she took her last Uber ride.
Now the second story.
On a stormy night in a quiet suburban neighborhood, Sarah, a mother of two, waved goodbye to her friends after a rare night out. The rain was falling in sheets, distorting the glow of the streetlights. She quickly booked an Uber, eager to get back to her children who were with a babysitter. A black sedan pulled up, its headlights cutting through the downpour. Sarah hurried inside, greeted by a driver whose face was obscured by the shadow of his cap. He nodded silently as she buckled up, the car pulling away with a smooth start. As they drove, Sarah noticed the driver taking an unfamiliar route. The streets grew narrower and darker, the houses more sparse and dilapidated. She tried respond, his silence stretching into an uncomfortable void. Sarah's heart began to race. She reached for her phone, but her battery was dead. A cold realization washed over her. She was completely cut off. The car slowed, stopping in front of an old, abandoned house. Its windows were boarded, and the garden was overgrown with wild, tangled weeds. Fear gripped Sarah. "Why are we stopping?" "This isn't my house," she said, her voice quivering. Without a word, the driver turned off the engine and turned to face her. His eyes were dark, devoid of any emotion, and his face, it was familiar. Sarah gasped in horror as she recognized him. He was a missing person, a face she had seen on news reports, gone without a trace years ago. Before she could scream, the car was filled with a chilling, otherworldly wind. Whispering voices surrounded her, cold and menacing. The driver's form flickered, revealing a spectral, ghostly figure. Sarah tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The ghostly whispers grew louder, turning into tortured screams. She felt unseen hands grabbing at her, pulling her into the darkness of the car. Then, as suddenly as it began, the car was flooded with light. Sarah blinked, finding herself outside her own home, the familiar street quiet and peaceful under the night sky. The car, the driver, the terrifying journey, all had vanished. Shaking and drenched in cold sweat, Sarah rushed inside. The babysitter was asleep on the couch, and their children were safe in their beds, oblivious to the nightmare their mother had just endured. Sarah never found out what happened that night or who the driver was. She stopped using ride-sharing services, the fear of that night haunting her. Sometimes, on stormy nights, she would hear faint whispers outside her window, a chilling reminder of her ride with the unseen passenger.
Now the third story.
It was a cold, foggy evening when Alex and Jamie, two high school friends, decided to take an Uber home after a late movie night. The streets were empty, the mist turning the lamplights into ghostly orbs. Excitedly chatting about the movie, they barely noticed the car that pulled up, a large, old-fashioned sedan, its paint dulled by age. The driver, a quiet man with a gaunt face and owl eyes, merely nodded as the kids got into the car. The interior was surprisingly cold, and a strange, musty smell lingered in the air. Alex and Jamie, engrossed in their conversation, paid little attention to these oddities. As the car glided through the foggy streets, Alex noticed they were not on the usual route to their neighborhood. The surroundings grew increasingly unfamiliar, the houses looking old and abandoned. A sense of unease began to settle over them. I think you're going the wrong way, Jamie said, trying to keep his voice steady. The driver didn't respond, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. The car seemed to move faster, the outside world a blur of shadows and mist. Alex tried his phone, but there was no signal. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped in this strange, silent ride. Suddenly, the car stopped in front of an old, decrepit mansion, its windows dark and lifeless. "Why are we stopping?" "This isn't our house," Alex said, fear edging his voice. The driver turned around slowly, his face now hollow, ghostly visage. "This is your stop," he whispered, his voice echoing unnaturally. Alex and Jamie tried to open the doors, but they were locked. The air grew colder, and a faint, eerie melody started to play, as if from a distant past. Shadowy figures appeared outside the windows, their faces twisted in silent screams. In a desperate attempt, Alex broke the window with his backpack. They clambered out, running as fast as they could away from the car, not daring to look back. The mist enveloped them, the chilling melody following. When they finally stopped, panting and disoriented, they found themselves in front of their homes, the familiar street quiet and safe. Turning back, they saw no sign of the car or the driver, as if they had vanished into thin air. The experience haunted Alex and Jamie. They never spoke of it to anyone, fearing disbelief or ridicule. But the memory of that night, the ghostly driver, and the spectral figures lingered in their minds, a nightmarish journey that had no explanation or reason.
Now the fourth story.
In a quiet town, on a moonless night, siblings Lily and Noah decided to take an Uber home from a friend's birthday party. The streets were deserted, shrouded in an unsettling darkness as they waited. A chill ran down their spines when an old, rusted car pulled up. It wasn't the modern vehicle they were expecting, but considering the late hour, they hesitantly got in. The driver was a shadowy figure, his face barely visible under the dim light of the dashboard. He didn't speak, but started driving immediately. Lily noticed that his eyes, visible in the rearview mirror, were unnaturally bright, like glowing coals. As they drove, the scenery outside began to warp and twist. Familiar streets melted into long, winding roads flanked by gnarled trees. The air turned thick with fog, and an eerie glow emanated from nowhere. Lily and Noah exchanged worried glances, their hearts pounding. "No, this isn't right. Please, stop the car," Noah demanded, his voice laced with fear. The driver remained silent, his speed increasing. The car seemed to be moving impossibly fast, the world outside now a blur of shadows and mist. The children's phones showed no signal, their attempts to call for help futile. Suddenly, the car stopped in the middle of a dense forest. The driver turned around, his face a skeletal visage, eyes burning with a malevolent light. "You are home," he hissed, his voice a guttural whisper. Terrified, Lily and Noah realized the doors were unlocked. They bolted out, running blindly into the forest. Behind them, the sound of the car engine revved into a deafening roar, mixed with the driver's haunting laughter. They ran until their lungs burned, the forest seemingly endless, the car's engine and the driver's laughter always just behind them. Just when they thought they couldn't run anymore, they stumbled upon a clearing. The car was gone, the laughter silenced. Exhausted and terrified, they found themselves back in their neighborhood, the familiar houses a comforting sight. But the horror of that night lingered. Every shadow seemed to hide a lurking terror, every car's engine a reminder of their nightmarish ride. The children never spoke of it, the fear of being disbelieved too great. But the terror of that Uber ride, the ghostly driver, and the never-ending forest haunted their dreams, a chilling reminder of the night they encountered the inexplicable horror of the never-ending ride.